Another hot day in the sun. I'm finally back. I got back a little while earlier, but then I had to do some stuff and took a shower and all that, right? I thought I'd talk about something. Yeah, I know crap's happening in the news. I know. I know there's the Google hearings, there's 1,000 things to say about that. But I'm on a Google platform. If I say anything too spicy, they're going to nuke my channel. Ain't that special? I guess I should say that's really all I need to say about it, isn't it? But what I am going to talk about is something I was thinking about because I've been playing back through the old Command and Conquers, and I really love what's the actor's name is, I think, Joel or Joe Kukin. I don't remember his name. The guy who plays Kane, who, if you see a picture of him today, he looks exactly the same as he looked in 1995. The dude is immortal. Which, I guess, interestingly enough, that's kind of the story with the character. The idea is basically he's the Kane of the Bible, interpretively. He was smitten by God, basically, to never die and wander the land of Nod eternally as punishment for basically acting out in jealousy against his brother, who he murdered. So that can mean a lot of different things. Now, his curse of never dying and living in the land of Nod, I don't think... Now, okay, the GDI campaigns are canon, with the exception of 4, but I don't consider 4 canon, because 4 was a steam pile of crap and it was rushed. But I haven't played Kane's Wrath, I will say that. So there might be more insight into this in Kane's Wrath. I'm getting to that. But I think Kane's actual curse is that he is betrayed by the people around him as he peaks. Because in every game, even though the GDI endings are the ones that are canon, in every game when you play the Nod campaign, including Tiberian Sun, I don't remember the details as much in Tiberian Sun. I do remember in Firestorm, there's the whole thing where the person who takes over in his name is basically a GDI spy. He's just a plant. He's not really a spy, but just a puppet. That's a huge betrayal, of the faith in Kane, as they would say. But he's pretty much, in every game, betrayed by his number 2, at least. And you, as the player, usually end up getting promoted. But it's kind of assumed, especially since those characters don't carry over, that probably still occurred in the GDI campaign. You just didn't see it. And that probably is the type of thing that led to the failure of his campaigns. You get some lucky breaks in the GDI campaigns, and, you play the Nod campaign, you realize Kane is way smarter and way more well planned than you could anticipate. He's got the was it the Tacitus or Tesseract? It's not the Tesseract. That's the thing from what the hell is that? The Tesseract, was that the name of the thing in Avengers or Transformers? I don't remember. I think it's, I don't know. Whatever. The Tacitus, I think it's called, and it's basically like if you're not familiar, or it's been a while since you played it, it's essentially an alien artifact that's like an alien supercomputer, and it's on Earth, and it basically explains everything that's going to happen with the screen. Basically, Tiberium's going to show up, it's going to seed the planet, and then when there's a peak amount of Tiberium, it causes basically an explosion, which causes a chain reaction, which sends off a liquid Tiberium explosion, and it's large enough for the screen to detect, and then the screen come out of their warp gates, and they land and settle on the planet, and they build their towers and do all their weird shit. He knows that's what's going to happen. That's what he's been planning for since basically 95. And he's always had secondaries. And he is fighting for it as hard as he can. And like Command & Conquer 3, like that's like his, like the screener there. He sets it up basically. There's nothing you can do to avoid the screen being called to Earth. So like it works. Like Kane's plans are still in motion. Like you see, everything's going to the way he wants it to go for the most part. In up until essentially you turn it around at the end. And is it really any surprise that it gets turned around at the end when his number two is essentially working against him? Like the number two, Killian in Command and Conquer 3. So in the Nod campaign, you see essentially after the Temple of Nod's destroyed, and basically Killian basically turns on him and says, like, you're sacrificing all these people and you're not telling me what the deal is. Like, she doesn't have any faith in him. And some of that is his own fault. But basically, he's now appointed somebody in power who he trusted, who doesn't have the level of faith that somebody who's actually, like, a loyal follower would have. So, like, the same as, oh my god, the guy from Lost, I forget what the character's name is. But your character particularly, like, you're not the number two in command. You become the number two later. But it's already done at that point. And he's pretty pissed off because he basically gets ambushed by his own forces when everything's going to plan. And that little bit of stuff causes him to actually end up having, basically, he ends up in hiding. He ends up, like, disappearing. And it's not really clear whether he, like, just let himself get killed and then comes back, because he keeps coming back. He keeps getting killed in games, coming back. It's really, it's unclear how he, like, respawns. But I tend to think that he probably didn't intend on, like, he intended on probably escaping, right? Because that's what it seemed like it was, so that he could be, like, basically ruling the roost after this massive explosion takes out half of Southern Europe, and GDI is completely up in confusion. But, like, you play the GDI campaign, that stuff still happens, and then basically Nod is, like, they're trying to get to the tower, but they're pretty anemic. You do have to deal with them, but you're basically mainly fighting the Scrin. You don't have to ally with Nod because in the Nod campaign, essentially you're the commander fighting GDI, so you've broken them to the point where they need the Nod to help. Also, Killian's there, and she works with Nod. She works with GDI in Australia because she thinks that's the only way to fight the aliens, as opposed to Kane, who has a much more thought out plan with the aliens, where he's basically like, well, we only need to strike in certain places and let GDI fight on their own, because what the aliens are trying to do is they're trying to build these towers, and we want to control the towers, so we don't want to hamper that. And Killian, of course, doesn't know all this, so it gets completely screwed over. So assuming there's parts of that, like assuming Killian's Killian and the GDI campaign is the one that's canon, Kane, you could argue, he loses, not just because you're the commander who's great, but he's basically because he's being betrayed. It basically forces him not to be as competent as he could be. Same thing happens in Firestorm. I'm sorry, is it Firestorm or is it Tiberian Sun? I forget. But there's a mole, or there's somebody who's basically a traitor in every single iteration. And again, I haven't played Kane's Wrath. I suspect probably something like that will happen there too. In the first one, it's Seth, his number two, giving orders, doing stuff. He has you kill Nakumba in the beginning. Who's Nakumba? I kind of think he was a rival Nod commander. That's what I get. That basically Nakumba's in hiding because he realized Seth has it out for him. Because Seth essentially has it out for you. Kane, of course, figures it out. And he stops you from essentially doing a North American operation that would have, like, screwed everything up that he was trying to do in Africa. And I take it Africa, I'm not sure in the first Command & Conquer, but I kind of feel like the Nod campaign in Africa is supposed to happen before the Eastern European campaign with GDI. Like, it's the beginning of it. Maybe not. Probably not, because of the way it ends with the ion cannon being hijacked and stuff. I'm not really sure how the timelines are supposed to line up in the first game. But still, he's betrayed. You know, he's got, basically, you're doing all these missions for with Seth under command, and you're really being counterproductive to what Kane's trying to do. Now, if you're playing GDI campaign and Seth is his number two, and Seth's going to basically betray the lower commander, who's not you in that case, but is the person who would be you, who may not have survived the interaction. He may have been like Nakumba and just gotten blasted. Because he stepped too far. And did Kane not figure that out that time? I don't know. But basically, Kane's betrayed in every single game. And I think that's actually what the curse is. So yeah, he lives continuously, but every time he comes back and rises, he's betrayed by those who are closest to him. basically it's treachery. Dante says, I think it's the ninth circle of hell. It's the worst possible thing is treachery, disloyalty, and that's all Kane wants. And you know this because when oh my god, the Southern guy, the guy from Lost in the second game, basically he says, well, you said, Killian's forces showed up and and they were betraying and she was plotting, and he walks it back. He says, well, look, I don't know for sure. That's what I thought had happened. That's what I had suspected, but I never got confirmation for sure, and I just want to do what's best for Nod. And when basically Kane just executes Killian because Killian's a problem anyway, and I think Kane knows that they are his forces, her forces. He says, what does he say to the other guy? He says, your faith has been tested, and you passed. Now, you would think if he was just an evil, maniacal asshole, you would think that he would be like, well, you didn't take the opportunity to eventually basically sell her out and guarantee I kill her. Instead, this dude told the truth to him. He was straight with him. He was not treacherous. He was honest. And Kane found that as passing. Despite the fact that basically Killian was jeopardizing this thing he's been working his entire life for. So I think that's what it is. I think that's the thing that Kane values, and that's the thing he cannot get in every game. It's denied to him, is essentially security in the people around him. In GDI, there's no expectation of security. Nobody really trusts each other necessarily. There's ruses that you're not let in on in the beginning of the game, but you act independently, and you don't. Nobody betrays you, essentially. But in this, in the Nod campaigns, there's always a betrayal. And if you assume that's going to be occurring during the GDI campaign, it really explains basically how Nod's defeated every time, despite, because you play the Nod campaign, you see what assets they have, and you're like, holy shit, like how are, GDI's screwed. But then you play the GDI campaign, you're like, okay, well, we're just going to ion cannon the shit out of them. And then you realize, in the first game, Kane had a way to hack into the ion cannon, or he gains that way. That's his whole plan. And it wasn't just your actions alone as the GDI commander that stopped that, because a lot of that stuff was just covert stuff. But it definitely, he's not going to be able to do that if Seth's working against him. Or I should say Seth's doing his own thing. So I thought that was interesting. Please ignore the water running. There's pipes down here. I'll probably board it up at some point. But, yeah. That's it. 10 minutes on Kane. And I really like the Command & Conquer franchise. Kane is... the actor is just so damn charismatic. He's just an absolute joy to have on the screen. So, I want to meet that guy, Joe. Is it Joe or Joel? I don't know. I'd recognize his name if I saw it. I don't remember what his name is. But the actor who plays Kane, he just... because he's also the audio director on the original. And I think he directed the FMVs on a couple of the games. I'm not sure if he directed them for 3. Threes are really good. I'm really surprised. 3, it feels like that early 2000s, but it has all the camp of the old 90s one. So I'm really enjoying 3. Gameplay wise, I can see why it's some people's favorite, and if you were introduced on this one, this is actually a very good one to be introduced on. I can see why people were upset, because I didn't play the 3 Tiberium Wars until after I played Red Alert 3, and I really loved Red Alert 3, but I can see why people who had played Tiberium Wars and then played basically Command & Conquer 3 and then played Command & Conquer Red Alert 3 felt that there was a downgrade, because there was a unit cap, and there just wasn't as much... there wasn't clusters of squads and stuff. There were certain things missing, because I think that just was how Red Alert 3 was built, as opposed to Command & Conquer 3, which is just kind of enhanced generals. I wish there had been Generals 2 running on the basically the Command & Conquer 3. It's the same engine, but having the stuff they learned from Command & Conquer 3 and then creating Generals 2, that would have been amazing. Now, I love Generals and I love the tech in Generals. Particularly General Shockwave. If you have Generals, download the Shockwave mod. It transforms the game into, I think, really what it's meant to be. And not that the core 0 hour isn't good on its own, but honestly, Shockwave is amazing. But that's kind of what I would imagine the next step
with the squads and the way the commands were working. And I think there's probably too many buildings, maybe. There wasn't enough upgrades for how many buildings there were. And then the upgrades that were there were all really expensive. And some of them were a little inconsequential. Like there's the multi-radar thing for the Venoms. And there's like a couple other you build the tech center for Nod in Command Conquer 3, and there's like 4 technologies you can pay for, and there's only one that's worth it. It's the one that turns basically the machine guns into lasers. That's worth it because it's expensive, but it's a force multiplier for all the units that use machine guns, particularly the Venom. It makes them way better, and makes the buggies way better. Particularly if you like using them in mass, like the laser just does so much more damage than the chain gun. It's big difference. But like that's the only upgrade worth having. And you need to have the building in order to build certain other things. So like you have to just protect that building as opposed to in the old Command & Conquer. Because I just got done playing the remaster. And like the remaster, once you build a building and unlock the technology, the building usually does something for you. So like it has a weapon that charges or it does something. But if you build the building and you unlock it, you can actually sell it or get rid of it. Or it can be destroyed, and you still now have the technology. It's almost like building the building. Instead of it allowing you access, it does the research, and that's kind of cool. I understand why you should. It's like, well, the tech building should be a prerequisite, and I think that's fine. But I feel like Command Conquer 3, it's like that's the limit in terms of like number of buildings you can have available that are prerequisites for stuff because. You got the shrine, and then the tech lab, the tech center, and it's like now is there's 4 upgrades on the one and 2 upgrades on the other, and like I said, only one was worth the damn. So 3 upgrades for 2 buildings that cost almost like 10 grand credits, like that. But you need it to get certain units unlocked, and now it's another thing to protect. So. I'm not saying there's balance issues because it doesn't seem like there is. I'm playing the game and it seems just surprisingly well balanced. But that's just a thought because I like doing game design, and it's not nearly as broken as Generals is. I love Generals. Generals is broken as hell. Generals is just a ton of fun to play. I've never had more fun fighting against bots in an RTS than playing Generals. Like so you can absurd strategies you can do. So. That's all.